Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Edwin McCain rocks the Birchmere in Alexandria, Virginia on Thursday and Ram's Head in Annapolis, Maryland on Friday. I caught up with the romantic singer-songwriter to discuss his career from I'll Be to I Could Not Ask for More. Hey, Edwin McCain. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, I don't even know if you remember this, but my wife and I talked to you probably for about an hour when you officiated our friend Kelly Bell and Adrian's wedding a couple months ago.
I absolutely remember that. That was such a great wedding. Such a great time.
And I bring it up to a lot of our fans probably don't know you were, I guess, are you officially ordained to kind of do that, or it's a fun little trivia?
I am a minister in the Universal Life Church. You can all go get your credentials online. It takes about 20 minutes, and you can officiate weddings.
That's awesome. Well, we had a blast chatting with you. We talked about everything under the sun you can imagine, but but it's kind of cool trivia fact that, he can do more than just music, folks. But let's talk the shows, because you're coming up here to the Birchmere in Alexandria, a legendary spot, on October 5th. And then I guess also at Ram's Head in Annapolis on October 6th. So 2 chances to see you. Where are you calling us from now? What are you setting up at a venue as we speak?
I'm literally in the bus pulling into a venue right now as we speak. And Wednesday night, I'm actually going to meet Brian May, so that's going to be fun.
So wait, tonight you're meeting Brian May of Queen? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to go. My manager, Wally, used to be Queen's tour manager back in the day, and he and Brian are still good friends, so I get to go with him to go see Queen and meet Brian May. So I'm really excited about that.
That's amazing. Wait, so they're performing. Are you all going to be in the same town? Is that why? What city are you in?
Yeah, they're going to be in Baltimore Wednesday night.
They're at CFG Bank Arena. Yeah, Adam Lambert and Queen and of course Brian May. Yeah, that's freaking awesome. Okay, so you're making your way down this way. Okay, I got you. So you're in PA now, then you'll be in Baltimore tonight, I guess, by the time this runs. Then you'll make your way down to the Birchmere. But all right, well, I have to ask then, do you have a go-to Queen song or two, man? I mean, what are you going to be geeking out the most over when you meet Brian?
Yeah, could anybody find me? Yeah, I love that song.
Somebody to love.
Yeah, I mean, come on. That's a great tune.
That is great. And yeah, Adam Lambert's done a decent, it's impossible to fill Freddie Mercury's shoes, but if anyone's done a good job, I think he's kicking butt at it, man. I
100% agree with you. He's a great singer, and it works perfectly.
Yes. And Freddie Mercury is like maybe the all-time greatest voice. That guy's register was insane. But it's cool that they're keeping it going. Well, try not to geek out too much when you meet Brian then. I'm sure your hands will be shaking.
I try not to. I try not to meet too many of my heroes, but I wasn't going to pass up an opportunity to meet him. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah, exactly. Now you know how we felt when my wife and I came up to you at the wedding.
Not even.
You're on Brian May level now. No, all right. Anyway, well, then let's get to the Birchmere. So you're doing that in Baltimore. That's cool. That's a local tie. We got Baltimore listeners too. Then you'll make your way down to Alexandria, Virginia, to the Birchmere, and then Ram's Head in Annapolis. What do we got in the show? Is there like a particular new album you're plugging? You're promoting most of the songs, or is it like sprinkling in the greatest hits too?
Well, I know my role is our crowd has a certain group of songs they always want to hear. So I'm definitely playing that. And then I'll probably play some new stuff, but we're playing full band this time. So a lot of times when we play Birchmere and Ram's Head, we usually are doing that as an acoustic trio, but we're going to bring the full band as venues now and rock it up a little bit. So really looking forward to that.
That's awesome. Well, I know whenever I have someone big like yourself on, I love to paint a picture of sort of your backstory for some of our listeners. And you've actually called in before, and so I know some of it, but in case some people missed it before, like I know you're born in South Carolina in 1970. What did you grow up listening to back, in Carolina in the 70s?
So I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, but I grew up listening to Earth, Wind and Fire and Tower of Power and Marvin Gaye and Wilson Pickett, and I was a huge fan of Roger and Zapp and the Gap Band and Luther Vandross, and I used to go. I mean, I used to make my parents, and my parents were pretty cool about it. Like they would drop me off at concerts, and I would just go to the concerts, and they would pick me up afterwards, and I would go to like a lot of these concerts were at Clemson University or at some of the colleges around in South Carolina. I would just pester my parents into letting me go to these concerts. I'm sure it looked kind of strange, some little kid going to see Gap Band concerts, but I loved it. It was amazing. It was so much fun.
That's a perfect way to learn about the great music, man. That's awesome. And then how did you, I know you got signed by Lava Records, I guess, which is an offshoot of Atlantic Records in 94, but how'd you start touring with weren't you touring with like Dave Matthews, Hootie and the Blowfish? Like, weren't those sort of the early tours for you?
Yeah. Well, so back then, in the early 90s, when we put the band together, the way that everybody did it was we would go up and down the East Coast playing in the fraternity houses. And the way you did that was you had to have your own PA, and you had to have enough of a truck to be able to carry it all around. And so you were basically your own sound company and the band, and you would play the fraternity houses until you had enough fans that were coming to those parties. And then you transition over into the local rock club, and you would just play fraternities and sororities until you had enough money to go to, Ziggy's in Winston-Salem, and then once you got into Ziggy's, you could actually make, once Jay Stevens at Ziggy's had booked you, then you kind of got, the door would open to all the other cool clubs, like up the East Coast, at like the Norva, or there was Phil's Grill in Virginia Beach, and then you could make it up to the Bayou in DC.
Yeah, in Georgetown, which isn't there
the
anymore.
930 Club. Yeah, it was like it was just one of those hand to mouth things, and we were all playing fraternities. And I remember one weekend, Dave Matthews was at W&L. We were at W&L with Dave Matthews, the Grapes, Hootie and the Blowfish, Jacko Pierce, and all on one campus, one weekend.
Wow. Can you imagine being a student at Washington and Lee, and that's the bill? Holy crap.
Yeah, but it was all, we were all playing at the same time at different houses.
Oh,
and so people were just running back and forth to the different fraternity houses. It was crazy. And then, a short few months later, Dave and Hootie were playing amphitheaters, and we were opening. So we were kind of always sort of the support act, but it was great. I mean, it was just a great spot to be in. It was a perfect timing. It was the end of grunge, and everybody was sort of tired of feeling sad. And then here comes Dave Matthews and Hootie, and they just kind of turned the corner and made it possible for so many bands in the Southeast to have careers.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. That's just wild to me that there were probably kids at Washington Lee just staggering, with a red Solo cup or whatever of keg beer, going from frat house to frat house and seeing. That's amazing to me. And then you all kind of just, your careers took off and you just took the frat party on the road. There you go.
It really literally was. We were backstage playing, 20,000 seats, going, man, dude, what happened? 10 minutes ago we were playing fraternity houses. Crazy.
10 minutes ago there was a beer pong table next to us, and now we're on a stage, sold out crowd. That's amazing. All right, well, we mentioned you signed with Lava in 94. You did the first album, Honor Among Thieves, in 95. But I guess like the really huge one, was the second one with Misguided Records, 1997, second album, because that had I'll Be on it, a huge hit. Tell me about, I think last time you joined us, you shared a cool story, but see if you could recount it for me. The big line in the song, I'll be your crying shoulder. Wasn't that like a little bit of like a misnomer? Like you heard someone say instead of shoulder to cry on or something? Tell me that story.
Yeah, this dude in the bar was hitting on a girl, and he just was just drunk enough to where he fumbled his words, and he meant to say, I'll be your shoulder to cry on," and he went, "I'll be your crying shoulder," and I went, "Wait a second," and I wrote it down on a napkin and just threw it in my pocket. And back then I'd overhear people say things, or I'd see situations, and I'd write them all down. I had scraps of paper, and I'd throw them all in my bag. And then when I got home, I was doing my laundry, I would get all the scraps of paper out and see if there was anything worth, anything song worthy. And that one came out of the bag right about the same time the record company president called me and said, "Listen, man, I just came from a department head meeting, and they're all talking about dropping you off the label. And, the next thing you turn in needs to be really great." And so I was like, okay, well, I have this one idea that I think is really good. And I sat down on my futon and wrote this song. And thank God I did, because otherwise I'd be your favorite pizza delivery guy.
Well, you'd be using napkins for another reason, to mop up pizza songs, not song lyrics. I'm glad you didn't throw that napkin into the laundry. I'm glad you pulled it out of the pocket. That's amazing. A great song. I mean, dude, it is like one of the, wedding songs, slow dance songs. It is like an all timer. It'll be played forever. It'll outlive you and me. That's crazy to me. Didn't you really have to pound the pavement driving around in a van and stuff, like radio stations? Like, didn't you really have to hit the circuit to promote that one?
Yeah, we hustled really hard in the beginning, because even with the song, we loved the song, but the record company we weren't really a priority for them. And so I had kind of a 3-ring circuit going with all my friends calling radio stations, and us riding around doing any single thing that any radio station wanted us to do. Like, I was playing like pool parties and doing drive-through weddings at Krispy Kreme donuts, and it was there was no shame in my game. I would do whatever it took, and mercifully it worked out. It was definitely a lot of work. And back then too, that was really the only way to reach a lot of people was through radio, and it was a 3-ring circus. But then Atlantic got the song placed into a show called Dawson's Creek, and it was like the final episode of the season. And I've never even seen the show. I'm embarrassed to say.
Oh, you got to go back and watch it, or maybe not at this point. Keep the streak going.
I've never watched a single episode of that show, and I guess that from that one episode, the end of the season, the sales like quadrupled. Like I don't even know. We were selling like 1,800 records a week, and then Dawson's Creek, and it was like 20,000, and then it just kind of started slow burning from there, and here we are almost 30 years later, and it's still going.
Wow. Yeah, you and Paula Cole. You remember? You know the theme song of that show, right? I don't want to
wait. Oh yeah.
But that's crazy to me that some of the first people that heard "I'll Be," this masterful song, were eating a donut at a Krispy Kreme.
Easily. I think back to some of this silly stuff we did. Like, I was like playing acoustic guitar in the lobby of radio stations, like just anything.
Yeah. Well, there was no streaming or Spotify or Pandora or there wasn't any of that. iTunes, it was nothing back then. So yeah, you had to hit the pavement. Well, maybe time for one more. I have to ask about I Could Not Ask for More. Obviously, because it was on the third album, Messenger, in 1999. I think it was in that movie, Message in a Bottle, too. But wasn't it? It was written by. So while you wrote "I'll Be on a Napkin" and you write most of your great songs, but this one, I Couldn't Ask for More, was written by the great Diane Warren. And didn't you not even know who she was at the time?
No, I didn't. I didn't know who she was. I literally we were in the studio recording our album, and some of the record smoothies. I used to call the people that work at the label the record smoothies, and they showed up and they were like, "Hey, Diane Warren wrote this song for you," and I was like, "Who's Diane Warren?" And they said, "You don't know who Diane Warren is?" I was like, "No, I don't, yeah." And they tried to explain it, and I listened to the song and I hated it, and because the tempo was the tempo was about half the speed it is now, and there was a verse in it that was just so Hallmark Cardi, and I couldn't do it, and I was like, ugh, no, I'm not doing this, and so I just basically turned them down, and they came back and they were like, well, wait, you can't turn down a Diane Warren song, and I was like, yeah, I just did. And
they're like, she wrote Because You Love Me for Celine Dion, and I Don't Want to Miss a Thing for Aerosmith, and How Do I Live for Leanne Rimes. Come on.
yeah, she's crushing it. So I mean, part of that whole thing is that, like, once you become an established songwriter, then everybody goes, oh, well, it's got to be a hit, including the program directors. So it has a pedigree, right?
Right.
If it's a Diane Warren song, well, it's automatically going to get airplay because Diane Warren will call the program directors and cuss them out if they don't put it on. It's like having a whole other, like, machine on board with you. And don't get me wrong, like, I've met her since then and hung out, and I love her. She's fantastic. She's hilarious. I mean,
but like, at the time, you didn't know who she was.
No, I didn't know who she was, and I love her as a person. She's a wacky person. I enjoy her company, especially. But at the time, I just didn't like the song, and it just didn't really fit with what I was hoping to do. And of course, I didn't understand that it would be important to do a Diane Warren song, and so the record company people said, well, what about this? What if we pay you to do it for a soundtrack? And I was like, oh, okay, sure, I'll do that. If you're going to pay me, yeah, definitely. So I recorded the song ostensibly for a soundtrack that was for a movie called Message in a Bottle. And it was a Kevin Costner film.
Yeah.
And then so as soon as they got hold of the recording, they took it to radio and went to work on it. And as soon as it got on the radio and started doing well, then they said, oh, yeah, by the way, it's going on your record. So, and that was the end of that, you know.
Yeah. Well, that movie was one of those Nicholas Sparks books adaptation, Kevin Costner, Robin Wright, and all that. So you had a built-in audience ready to go for that.
Yeah, and I wasn't, you know, I was young, so I didn't understand. Like, you know, if the record company has come up with a plan and they already have a song in mind, you should probably just play ball because, you know, they have a lot of other stuff they're trying to do too. So
right.
I reluctantly had a hit. So,
but did you like it better once you picked the tempo? You said you doubled the tempo and cut out a verse. Like, are you happy with the version now?
Yeah, no, yeah, I love it now. I mean, it's a great song to sing, and people, you know. But at the time, it was just one of those like, wait a minute, I had never done anybody else's music outside of ours, so outside of what I had been writing, so that was weird. But now I don't have any compunction. A great song is a great song. I'm happy to sing great songs.
Absolutely. Well, there's a ton of people listening to this that love I Couldn't Ask for More. So we're glad you did it. And what'd you think? Didn't Sarah Evans did a country cover of it too? Right? That was pretty good.
Sarah Evans had a hit with it. Yeah. So first of all, it was definitely a hit song, and I I was just too dumb to realize it.
Aren't we all? All right. Well, I mean, I only said that was time for our last question because I know you're like on a bus and I'm trying to be generous of your time. But if you do want to plug anything else, you've done a ton of music since then. I mean, is there? How about I say this? If there's people that only know those two big songs or whatever and aren't as familiar with the stuff since then, because you've done a crap ton of stuff since then. What are you like most proud of that you should be like, hey, everyone, go back and check out, this particular one, like that maybe people don't know as well. Like this is I'm really proud of this one.
I really liked an album we did called Far From Over, and really it was a terrible title for an album because it was officially over with Atlantic. You should never title an album Far From Over, kids. Let that be your lesson. You're tempting fate. But I really like that record, and I also made another record called Lost in America that I really like. That was sort of an indie record.
Was that based on the Albert Brooks movie?
Yes. No, not based on not based on the Albert Brooks movie, but that was definitely in our mind when we made it.
That movie, isn't that movie hilarious? So not only Albert Brooks not only him at his peak, but Julie Hagerty, remember his wife who was in Airplane. But the scene where they quit their jobs, obviously, just so in case our listeners miss it, they quit their jobs and get in this RV and are touring the country, living off the grid or whatever. And he wakes up one night at a casino and she apparently has a gambling problem, and she's like, put it on 22, put it on 22. It's so funny.
Yeah, she lost it all. Then he's got to do the whole thing and go in and go, the desert is has heart.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious. Yeah. 22. That part gets me every time. Well, cool. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. You've been generous with your time. We'll let you run because you're probably about ready to get off the tour bus.
Yeah, we're getting ready to load in and get started.
Well, have a great show, and best of luck with Brian May and Queen tonight. Enjoy the show in Baltimore before we head down to the Birchmere and Ram's Head, all right?
Thank you so much.
All right, great catching up. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.